Hi there, my name is Pat Gaughan and welcome to this short screencast on common mistakes in a SWOT analysis. SWOT, also known as situation analysis, is a very common way for an entrepreneur or manager to evaluate how a business or opportunity relates to an external market environment. If done incorrectly, it is also one of the very best ways to convince a potential investor or senior manager that you have no idea what you're doing. As such, it is important to know how to properly do a SWOT analysis. So what is it? A SWOT is a common component of a business plan that seeks to evaluate the strategic fit between a firm's internal strengths and weaknesses as related to the external business environment's opportunities and threats. What's the problem with this? Well, everyone remembers SWOT as the name, but the fact is that you cannot really clearly define the internal strengths and weaknesses without first clearly understanding the external opportunities and threats. As a result, the people who don't pay attention and try to describe strengths and weaknesses invariably slide into opportunities and threats, leaving a complete mess. So why is it so hard? Well, the fact is that the apparent simplicity of the model requires fundamental distinctions to be made. And the problem is that people say, well, it's a SWOT analysis, strength, weakness, opportunity, and threats. I'll start by discussing strengths. Okay. How do you know that an individual firm component is in fact a strength without knowing the broader context that makes it relevant? Likewise, how do you know what the weaknesses are? And making matters even worse, when someone has not taken the time to really understand the distinctions, they invariably start putting firm aspects, firm resources into discussions of the opportunity and firm weaknesses into threats. So how do you properly do it? You start by looking externally and objectively, and make sure it's external. You actually have to ask yourself, why is there a market opportunity? And don't say because you have. Once you start hearing because you, or my firm, or my company, you're immediately taking the strengths and weaknesses of the firm and pushing it out into the market. That's the end result. It is not how you examine what the external market opportunity is. So for instance, assume that I have an idea of opening a new restaurant that's going to focus on Central African food. You would not start by saying why my food and my chef are the best in Central African food. What you would have to do is you'd have to start by explaining why within a relevant geographic area that you're going to define. There is a demand that's going to be increasing and accessible for foods that will include Central African fare. So you would start looking at, for instance, the amount of disposable income that families are having, the changes in buying habits, hopefully showing that people are increasingly going out to eat food, and then looking at the traits. Is this the type of restaurant, do they need to have drive-thrus because they won't get out of their cars? Or is it at the other extreme where it's a major event that happens regularly where they want to sit down and have new experiences? All those things are the external aspect. How many people are there that are in the space of increasingly wanting to eat out? How much money do they expect to spend while they are out? How important is parking? Do they expect valet? All those components are broader market opportunities that have very little to do with any of your firm resources. Likewise, after you've looked at the opportunities, look at the threats, such as now that we have people spending more money, they also perhaps are less loyal to any individual brand, or maybe part of this new global eatery approach, people switch regularly because they're trying as many different ethnic experiences as possible. If that's the case, then you would expect there to be more people out spending more money, but they're more likely to switch and try different offerings. Again, don't bring in the individual firm aspects of it. It is only after you have looked at the opportunities and threats, and in fact, if you really want to be a show off, here's where you put the key successes. This is where you say, given these various opportunities and threats, this is what has to be present to be able to be successful in the new market dynamics. It is only after you've done that that you now look at the internal, your strengths and your weaknesses, and make sure the line is clear. Having established that you objectively really do appreciate what's going on out there, what are the market opportunities, what are the threats, what needs to be a component of it, then and only then can you say, oh, by the way, we happen to have the world's premier chef in Central African, cuisine. It is only at that point when suddenly you having a valet has meaning. So what are some of the common problems that people run into? Number 1 and number 2 are the real common ones that we've just been discussing. They conflate firm strengths with market opportunities. They conflate firm weaknesses with market threats. And oh, by the way, those are fatal mistakes. That when an investor or a manager reads a report where it's clear that you really don't understand what you're doing, the big question is presented of what else have you snuck in there that is wrong. Now, a related issue, which is a little bit related to this whole thing, is number 3. Quite often you find that students or entrepreneurs try to force in their idea. So they feel compelled to claim that they're going to put McDonald's out of business as part of our Central African offering. The fact is that you do not need to control the entire market for there to be an opportunity for your business. Quite often there are market niches. And in fact, our example would be a good example of that. By overstating your importance, by claiming that your Central African food will have McDonald's out of business within 5 years, all you have done is undermined your credibility. So don't overstate what it is that you're going to achieve with it. Establish that in fact there's a market niche that you're going to be able to serve. Figure out how large it is and how well you can defend it. And then move on, because you will have actually established your credibility. So some advice. When you're going to do a SWOT analysis, do it backwards. Look at the opportunities first for the market. Look at the threats for the market. Make sure if you see any reference at all in those sections to your individual firm, resources, or idea, take them out. Then and only then do you look at the strengths and weakness. If you find yourself overselling, stop. Ask yourself, do you seriously believe what you're saying? Will a reader believe you? And if you're unable to keep credibility, if you back everything on out, then just ask yourself, do you really have an opportunity here? Is this something where it's just a good idea, but guess what? If you're really trying to force things, it's trying to tell you perhaps you should stop and reevaluate the wisdom of the overall idea. Hopefully that gives you a better idea of how to do a SWOT analysis. If you have any questions, please let me know. And have a nice day.